Just want to say at the start that this wish list should not be confused with my expectations. I mean, having unrealistic expectations, that's just a setup for disappointment. I mean, all I'm expecting from Season 7 of the Clone Wars is that the final 12 episodes are going to be the 4 from Crystal Crisis, the Bad Batch arc, and the Siege of Mandalore. Because each of those were 4 episodes apiece. And that's all I'm expecting. And if that's all we get, I am completely happy with that. I mean, anything more than that is a bonus. Well, that being said, I can still dream, and in no particular order, here's 5 things that if I could wish for anything that would be included in the Clone Wars when it returns, or, in a few later years, here's what I'd want as part of the complete Clone Wars experience, in no particular order. The first thing on the list is that the 12 final episodes would be 12 movie-length episodes. As you know, the Clone Wars movie was originally 4 of the episodes for Season 1 that were just merged together into one feature-length thing. And that is essentially how the show has been designed. Besides your occasional standalone episodes, the stories range from 2 episodes long to sometimes 5 episodes long. But then in the later seasons, they were consistently 4 episodes in length. Were designed in such a way so as that if you wanted to, you could watch, for example, the Deception arc with Obi-Wan, all 4 of those episodes back to back, and that is its own little movie. There were 13 stories left to tell for the Clone Wars. Each of these stories were 4 episodes in length. There was an arc with the Bounty Hunters, where Boba Fett was going to face off against Cad Bane. There was the Crystal Crisis arc, which we've seen out in reels. There was Ahsoka's Walkabout, which is where she was handling life outside the Jedi Temple. There was the Bad Batch arc, which we also got in the reels. There was an assassination attempt on Dooku, and also the Dark Disciple episodes, which were 8 episodes, but they were released as a book. The Bad Batch was supposed to go to Kashyyyk. There was the Son of Dathomir comic. There was supposed to be an arc where they returned to Mon Cala. There was supposed to be an arc where it was Top Gun with clones. And then the Siege of Mandalore. There was also supposed to be an X-Files type set of episodes based around the Yuuzhan Vong. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. But given that all that storyline in Legends is gone now, that story, at least for the time being, is a bit irrelevant. So that leaves 12 remaining stories. So it would be awesome if the final 12 episodes were actually 12 movie-length episodes, and it could be like a season of movies. I think shows like Scooby-Doo did that at one time, where you'd got 2 seasons of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And then it did a season called The New Scooby-Doo Movies, which were each an hour long in length. Although, at least with the Clone Wars, it'd be a 90-minute movie each, sort of thing. Which that'd be a really awesome setup. I'm not expecting that, but that'd be amazing to have, I think. And there's also a bonus story. I think it were a standalone. I think at one time they were wanting to do a prequel episode to the whole of the Clone Wars where Ahsoka was a child, where Plo Koon brought her to the Jedi Temple. There was supposed to be a story around that where there was a bounty hunter seeking Ahsoka. They could still release that, I think, as a short, 20-minute episode at some point. As like a bonus episode on the Blu-ray, but not as not as part of the main season of movies. Number 2 would be to adapt the short story from the Dark Disciple novel, Kindred Spirits, which I reckon it'd only come up to like 3 or 4 minutes in length. This short story looks at Asajj Ventress's new yellow-bladed lightsaber. So I think that, as a short story, could serve as a whole prologue to the Dark Disciple storyline. So to have that as a small, extra short animated video would be awesome, I think. Number 3, following on from that, would be an epilogue to the Dark Disciple novel. So a bit of spoilers ahead for that. Following on from my previous video, which you can find links in the description for, when I've been thinking about Anakin's scar and how they could resolve that as an issue, all they would need to do is have a short epilogue story, maybe 2 or 3 minutes long, to the Dark Disciple novel. Because really, that entire story is important to Anakin, because there's a romance there between Ventress and Quinlan Vos, and Anakin is kind of watching this from the sidelines during the novel, and the way he sees the Council react to Ventress and Vos, he then knows from this that that's the way that they would react if they found out about him and Padme. So then Ventress sacrificing herself just for Vos at the end of it, I think that would have quite a big impact on Anakin. And so, again, following on from our previous video, so watch that if you want to know what I'm talking about. Because scars have meaning in the Star Wars universe. Anakin would go and have that scar removed, because it no longer needs to serve as a reminder of a big defeat that he had from Ventress, because Ventress is now reformed, and she reformed with a dying axe. And then that would set up some of the later stories that can be told around Anakin Scar and Count Dooku, and resolving that whole issue with...
This time we will do it together. I was about to say that. We'll take him together. You going slowly on the left.
Taking now! No, Anakin, no! No!
My powers have doubled since the last time we met, Count.
Dooku, for once you actually came to do your own dirty work.
Sometimes things are just that important.
Following on from my first point with the 12 movie-length episodes, the first season of the Clone Wars, some of the story arcs in that, upon like rewatching them, like if you were to try and watch some of those as movies, they are very disjointed, kind of like a relay race. Like, for example, there's the 3 episodes surrounding Newt Gunray, and in the first episode the main character is Padme and Jar Jar, and then it swaps to Ahsoka and Luminara, and then it swaps to Nadar Veb and Kit Fisto and Grievous at the end, and Newt Gunray is only got like a little cameo appearance. So that, if you were to try and watch that as a movie, it feels very disjointed, almost like a relay race. But there was a short comic series released alongside Season 1 of the Clone Wars called Tales from the Clone Wars. And what that did is it had a series of short stories that each served as a prequel episode to all of the Season 1 episodes of the Clone Wars. Now, it wouldn't fix any of these little disjointed issues, but it would kind of, I think, help a little bit with some of the flow, and also fill in a few little plot details. Like, at the end of the Dooku captured episode, Anakin and Obi-Wan have kind of swapped their drinks around so that they're not going to fall asleep. But then at the start of the next episode, they've clearly had a dose of that stuff that Hondo wanted to put in their drinks, and they got knocked out and they got captured. And so there's a little kind of blank in there, but this comic series actually just fills in the blanks of what happened between those 2 episodes. And so while it won't help bridge some of the more disjointed arcs, it does help to create a single narrative plot thread that kind of runs through the season, if you will. It sets up Padme's visit to Rhodia just before the episode where she's on the Malevolence, and it also sets up the Skytop station. So by having those be animated in 3D, it would kind of create a single narrative thread that runs through Season 1, strengthening that as a whole, even if it can't necessarily help the individual story arc in every case. And also it would then fit in with the pattern of how with Star Wars Rebels, before that show aired, we had 3 or 4 little 3-minute shorts for that. And also the same now with Star Wars Resistance. In the mid-season break, they released 12 shorts, so they could release 21 shorts like that that all fit in, that are all prequels to those episodes. So, number 5. This one follows on again from my previous video, and it's about trying to find a place in new canon for the classic 2003 Clone Wars. One of the points I raised in that video was that the 2003 Clone Wars does work better as like a legend type story. So that kind of got me thinking along the lines of how would you bring that across as a legend? And as with the children at the end of The Last Jedi, recounting the story of how Luke faced down the First Order, you'd have a similar setup with this. Gennady Tartakovsky would come back and make a Clone Wars 2003 Special Edition, basically. You'd get all the voice cast from the 2008 Clone Wars, and they would come in and replace the 2003 actors. You can have artwork tweaks, the Grievous in chapters 22 to 25 can look a lot more like the Revenge of the Sith version. The Battle of Coruscant can be updated, so the Separatist vehicles and all the Navy is the proper blue colours that they should be. Fix any other little continuity errors. And like with Maz in The Forces of Destiny, how she turns up, prior to certain segments to sort of give a bit of a narration, you could do a similar thing, but then you would use the 2008 3D animated style and use that as like an introduction and a conclusion to the main segments. And the way it would be is that it's told from the perspective of a group of younglings that have snuck some really recent mission reports from the war into a secluded part of the Jedi Temple, and then they're all telling each other these stories, kind of thing. Kind of like you have a bunch of kids telling each other ghost stories. And it'd be broken up as follows. You'd have, the Clone Wars chapters 1 to 21. That would all be one thing, and that can be told by Ahsoka, so you can show a younger Ahsoka, she's there. You can even bring in Kanan, Caleb Dume. I know a lot of people wanted him to be in Season 7, but that literally can't happen without some kind of major rewrites, or unless they wanted to just have a pointless cameo. But this way you can have Ahsoka around with Caleb Dume, you can bring in some new faces, some new younglings, or even bring in the younglings from the Season 5 youngling arc, and have those be sort of going through these mission reports. So then it swaps to the 2D animation style, and the stuff that you see, the intense action scenes, the overpowered nature of the Jedi, that is how the younglings are envisioning them. So then you've essentially got all the stories are canon, all the dialogue is canon, not necessarily the way that it happens is canon. And then the second segment, you can then have Gennady Tartakovsky adapt the Clone Wars Adventures set of comics. Not all of them, but the relevant ones. All the ones that would be set prior to Christophsis, you could have those be animated. And then you can also show the events of Anakin when he first meets Rex, when he first takes over the 501st Legion. You can have Ventress when she returns after her defeat on Yavin, and she completely wrecks Anakin. She gives him the scar. She ends up meeting Obi-Wan, starts off their flirtatious relationship. And you can finally have Anakin killing Dirge by launching him into a star, which I think is what happened in Legends, if I'm right. Adapt those ideas. And then, at the end of it all, you can just have Ahsoka getting called to see Yoda for a conversation about Anakin, and that can hint towards Christophsis. So then you've got those are the first sort of two specials, if you will. And then you'd into, timeline-wise, the whole of 2008 show. And then in the third segment, so Ahsoka's gone at this point, and Caleb Dume's also gone because they're off doing their own thing. All of Caleb's battles are recounted in his comic series. The third segment is that it's a bunch of younglings again, and they're all gathered around, and this is set just after when Anakin has rescued the Chancellor. And so the mission report has just come back from that. So the younglings then would go into what is chapters 22 to 25 of the 2003 Clone Wars, and then any other little leftover shorts from the Clone Wars adventures that aren't about Order 66, but that are when Anakin's got his longer hair can be told. And then also, as a prelude to those chapters, you can just briefly detail how Dooku would give Anakin the scar and give him a massive devastating defeat when Anakin goes to face Dooku alone against Obi-Wan's advice, which again that would settle the...
This time we will do it together. I was about to say that. My powers have doubled since the last time we met, Count.
The fourth and final sort of special for the old classic Clone Wars would be them adapting any of the Order 66 stories from the Clone Wars Adventures comics. And some of the surviving younglings can meet up after Order 66, including any that are contained within the comics, and they will recount what they have heard about it or what they have experienced about it. And if you've read the Clone Wars Adventures tales, there are some cool little interesting short stories in there. There's one where when General Grievous takes over the droid army, he has to fight Ventress and Dirge at the same time, which would be an interesting battle to have shown. I've read through the whole thing, and for the most part, the continuity errors are very, very minor and can be fixed if it was to be adapted. And again, as I've said, people really want to see Kanan included in the Clone Wars returning, and that's not going to be met in a proper way. And I think the best way that they could include him is with this, at least with the first two of those specials. They can have Kanan be there, which I think then would satisfy a lot of the fans, and it wouldn't be done in a fan servicey way. It would be in a more interesting way, more purposeful way, and that would satisfy the other side of fans like myself that did really enjoy the 2003 Clone Wars and would want it to be part of it, because it was the pilot for the 2008 show originally, and without that one we probably wouldn't have had the 2008 show later on. But why bother with all this? What's the purpose? You should never just make something for the sake of it or for fan service. It should always serve a larger purpose within the Star Wars narrative. In this case, that would be to reinforce what Luke says in The Last Jedi.
Now that they're extinct, the Jedi are romanticized, deified, and I became a legend. Because I was Luke Skywalker, Jedi Master. A legend.
So you just think, if this is how a group of younglings, and these younglings are around when the Jedi are in the height of their powers, these are the ones that would know the Jedi the best, because they're going to one day become Jedi. If this is the way that they are romanticizing them with their super insanely overpowered superheroic feats, then what does that say for what the galaxy is going to be like once the Jedi are gone and out of the picture in Luke's time? So if the 2003 Clone Wars is framed in this way, it can actually serve a greater purpose for the Star Wars narrative and show the types of legends that people are telling about the Jedi. So yeah, that's basically it. That's my ultimate wish list for Season 7. So the 12 final episodes will be movie-length episodes, with Ahsoka as a child being maybe a bonus, and if they ever wanted to do the Yuuzhan Vong story, that's one they could come back to later, if they ever brought the Vong back into canon. Adaptations of the Kindred Spirits short story, and also make an epilogue story to the Dark Disciple novel. The 21 short stories from Tales from the Clone Wars would be adapted as 1 to 3 minute length shorts. And then finally you have a 2003 Clone Wars special edition. And for me that would be the absolute perfect way to end the Clone Wars. But as I said, I'm only expecting the final 12 episodes to be Bad Batch, Crystal Crisis and the Siege of Mandalore, and if that's all we ever get, then I am perfectly happy with that.